All right, so this is the Sound Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee Public Forum. Judge Weltram, in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy by remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. And if you just go online, you can only see how to log in via Microsoft Teams. So first we will call to order. If each member will say their name. Start. Oh,
Nancy Lockwood.
Mark Adams.
Oriana Conklin. Bruce Gozzi. And myself, Michelle Stephanie. And then online we have.
Michaela Murphy.
Excellent, thank you. Do we want any other notes of who's here for public knowledge or that's sufficient?
Okay, who's on the agenda?
Yeah.
It's going around.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. And
Do you want to do a brief overview again or? So, we do have this slide up, with some information about the committee. If you were not here last time, here is basically just the mission of this committee.
so the committee first has drafted a request for proposal to get a consultant to help in drafting a coastal resiliency plan for the town. Much needed, and the will be released tomorrow in the paper and publicly, and then we will begin the bidding process for consultant. Our committee is a temporary board, so if you go to provincetown-mass.gov and look us up under temporary boards, if you want to see our meetings, you're welcome to attend at any time to make a public statement at the beginning of our meetings. We will be holding these public forums regularly, and once we get a consultant, we'll be working with them and with the select boards of the town with our staff liaisons and drafting a plan, which will open up a lot of good possibilities for the team.
Okay. Just, if I can clarify, there is a section on the agenda for public comment. But at the end of each of the initial presentations, we'll be inviting you to ask any questions.
Just tell me what, happy to split through the board. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Kalai Pichu and I'm the program manager at Barnstable County for water quality and hazardous waste. And I was invited to present to you all about chemical resilience, which is a kind of a new term that's coming through from the Commonwealth down to the local level. I've been managing this program for about 20 years, and I've seen a lot of hazardous waste. This is a image from Provincetown on the right-hand side, which I thought was a good way to start this off. And just for a kind of a primer, I live in Provincetown. I live in the East End. I serve on the Board of Health in this town. I'm an oyster farmer in the West End, and so if you ever have questions or anything like that, not only am I available through Barnstable County, but I'm also available in town. You know where I live because you're my mail person. So I'm just going to start this off kind of a little informally. It's 1 gallon of gasoline. You can see all those gas tanks can contaminate 1 million gallons of drinking water, according to the US EPA. So when we really start thinking about the chemicals that we have in our homes, for like generators or for whatever purpose we have them in, it's really important to kind of think about how to manage them. So I'm going to go over a little bit about chemical resiliency, chemical security, some other topics. I put that slide up because there's always the elephant in the room when I'm in charge of the presentation. We go like, how do you even say your name? I put that up there. My name's Calliope, and so that's how you pronounce it. A lot of people struggle with that. So. One of the programs that I manage through water quality and hazardous waste is the hazardous waste collection program. And I put this picture on the slide because when my husband was in the room, he got down on his knee on Long Point to ask me to marry him in 2017 or 2016. He was right next to this drum. This was an orphan drum that washed up from a boat somewhere in Provincetown. And it's an explosive reactive chemical that's reactive with water. So I just thought it was funny, this picture, because chemicals are kind of everywhere. They follow me around. With pictures here. So my program is with the Cooperative Extension, Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, which is part of Barnstable County government. We've been part of the county government since 1916, not me personally, but, we're the education department. So you might have heard we have like a tick guy, an entomologist, we have a horticulturalist, we did the Master Gardener program and 4-H and some other programs. Water quality and hazardous waste is one of them. So just quick stats, kind of grab the interest. In 2023, all 15 towns and the Dennis Water Districts together, we collected 607,000 pounds of household hazardous waste, which is about 303 tons. And we did that with over 5,800 residents brought us lots of gasoline and pesticides and pool chemicals and all kinds of other stuff. And then I also have a small business waste program, and I collect waste from businesses. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then I work with towns and fire department, health, harbor master, et cetera, to collect marine and road flares. And we did about 5,800 devices. Those hyperchlorates, which are a thyroid inhibitor. So interesting. In Provincetown, it's the harbor master, we drop that stuff off. Mercury, collected over 86 pounds of elemental mercury in a small survey of towns. It's quite a lot of mercury. And sharps, we run a sharps collection program and collect close to 25,000 pounds of dirty needles all throughout Cape Cod. And I do this with partners, municipal partners, and fire and water districts, like the DPW, et cetera. So certainly don't do this on my own. But the point is people have a lot of things in their homes, for their businesses, for their vehicles, boats, RVs, whatever. And a lot of these products that are chemicals can be problematic if they're not disposed of correctly. So my job is to like intercept these toxic chemicals before they make it into the wild, and then dispose of them in an environmentally correct way. So some fun stats. We get all kinds of crazy stuff. There's some mercury there. You can see in that container. I got this in Sandwich this past year. A 17-year-old kid drove up an open flatbed truck with that in the back. And I was like, oh, I'm glad you weren't in an accident, dude. So that's a lot. But people have crazy stuff in their home. And whether you are considering water quality or you're thinking about this from an emergency preparedness perspective, or climate change with chemical security and chemical resiliency, I'm super concerned about first responder safety. Like if you went into a structure fire and that was in there, that would cause a lot more problems, or a big flood, like in the East End, for example. That stuff is in your basement, all that mercury. That was about 15 pounds of elemental mercury would just be, released right into the wild. So that's, something that I'm really concerned of and proud to offer these services through Barnstable County. If you're ever interested in volunteering, yes, this is a ploy to get you to volunteer. I think October 5th, we decided is the Provincetown hazardous waste collection. But Provincetown residents can go to Truro and Wellfleet to dispose of their hazardous waste. And you can see the bottom stat. We've collected 2.6 million pounds of toxic chemicals in Barnstable County in the past 5 years through these programs. So they can really make a huge difference. One of the things that I'm real interested in is household chemical safety and also for small businesses. So if you have chemicals, is that insecticide? Is that actually alcohol? Who knows? I love secondary labeling. That's very amusing sometimes. But people have crazy stuff in their homes. And if you're going to use it or you're going to store it, you're going to transport it to me or to a hazardous waste collection for disposal, it's really important to think about storing it correctly, using what you really actually only need, thinking about a less toxic alternative to what you might be wanting to use. For example, if you're trying to kill something like rats, thinking differently than rodenticides, or you want to kill crabgrass, thinking about something differently than an herbicide. Those are all pesticides under the umbrella. You can always find a less toxic alternative. One of the most important things is storing chemicals correctly. If you have chemicals in your home, you're subject, unfortunately, to structure fires and floods and other emergencies, and you really want to make sure those chemicals are protected if you really want to use them. Another thing that's coming on the forefront, and this doesn't really apply to Provincetown, but I threw it in there so I can tell you about, the work I've been doing with the Department of Homeland Security. I suppose it's kind of fun. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security is very interested in chemical security. They're noticing that there's a lot of waste categories of chemicals that households have, like pesticides, that can be slowly aggregated without a lot of scrutiny and then used in situations that are very problematic. And for those of you that are old enough to remember, I'm thinking like, the Alfred Murrah building when it got blown up in Oklahoma, that was all pesticides. So we're working with talking with towns and small businesses in tier 2 or larger businesses on securing chemicals that could be used in domestic terrorism. Again, it's not really something I think we have to think about too hard in Provincetown, but just definitely mindful of that. Next slide. And this is really my passion these days is chemical resilience. So whether you're writing municipal vulnerability plans or you're thinking about your own vulnerability in your own home or small business, like how many chemicals do we really need? Like, do you need chloroform in your home? Something I actually get quite a lot of chloroform. I'm not sure who brings it to me, but people want these chemicals. We have this real strong chemical romance in our country and people love their chemicals, whatever. But protecting you and your pets and your family members, especially maybe if people are like vulnerable or have like mental health issues, we're seeing increasing instances of chemical suicides. You really want to think about your own home and your own residence and chemical resilience. I want to think about it a little bit more like now that Massachusetts is an OSHA state for departments, like thinking about securing the DPW chemicals and the fire department chemicals. All of those can be released into the wild and impact our environment in a less than positive way. So when you kind of think about what you can do, chemical resilience and how you can protect your home and your family and your pets is a good place to start. I love this picture. This is a 5-gallon bucket of sodium cyanide that I got last year. Super dangerous. If I could swear, I would. That was a crazy load. People have nutsy chemicals in their home. I'm just telling you that again and again, because I see a lot of it after 20 years in this program. But these are some action items for you. Advocate for municipal chemical safety. What is the fire department doing with their AFFF firefighting foams, etc.? That's a good thing to think about. Massachusetts is now an OSHA state for municipal departments. If you work in town or you work in a small business or a large business, what's your chemical safety like? Are you protecting, your environment? And then chemical safety really starts from procurement, your own procurement. Like, what are you buying? You can buy this stuff online. But when it comes to procuring chemicals, cleaners, hand sanitizers, which by the way are a flammable liquid, that all comes from procurement, either you or someone in like your home, or if you work in town, a department. Procurement should really be understanding where the chemicals are coming from, how many are used, and where they're being stored and how. The scariest place that I've ever received chemicals, not just from like a local pharmacy that was closing up, but it's from schools. School chemical collections, like their laboratory and their art studios, are really problematic. Making connections, telling people, like if you come to a hazardous waste collection again, October 5th, let your friends and your family, your neighbors know, because we're all connected. You see your neighbors with gas tanks, like that first picture. Ask them, like, do you need some help disposing of this waste? 1 gallon of gasoline, 1 million gallons of drinking water. Again, there is some volunteerism. Every water quality agency on Cape Cod, whether an NGO, a nonprofit, a government, everyone needs volunteers. So you can think about how you align your life and your belief systems with volunteerism. And then some of the other stuff that we already talked about. These are some other resources. The top one is my website through Barnstable County. It's called loveyourlocalwater.org. The next couple of ones are really for businesses. If you're looking to secure business chemicals or looking for less toxic alternatives, or you want to enroll in a free program to help you like explore your chemical inventory and find those toxic alternatives, UMass Lowell's TURI, Toxic Use Reduction Institute, is a great option. The Office of Technical Assistance, they come from the Office of Energy and Environment. They do some great work. Now the Department of Homeland Security is offering a whole suite of programs for people to think about chemical resilience, chemical safety. et cetera. And then we have some fact sheets on that website. I don't know that anybody really uses well water anymore, but if you were interested in finding out more about what like sort of natural contaminants are in the water, like arsenic, those fact sheets are on there. And then this is a fun infographic that someone in my office made about how much waste we collected last year. Slide. Yep. Oh, no, one more. So this is one of my favorite things. This is just a quick resource. I'm the team leader for the Cape Cod Groundwater Guardians, and I've been on that program for 20 years. We do wet festivals in the schools, and we'll coming to Provincetown in, I think, early March. Provincetown, Truro, and Wellfleet. We do 23 activities that teach about climate change and septic system health and all different kinds of fun things through activities, along with AmeriCorps Cape Cod. And one of the through the Groundwater Guardians, but we also offer some fun resources like these infographics. These are available for free, or if you want a poster, I have some like hard copy posters for your office or whatever. I love the one on the right, the aquifer one. I think it's very pretty and attractive. But there's a whole suite of them like on wastewater, contaminants of emerging concern, nitrogen and phosphorus. You can really find out more about these chemicals and these contaminants that are harming our groundwater and finding their way into our natural resources like shellfish, etc. I mentioned I'm an oyster farmer, and so I'm like, kind of concerned about that kind of thing. So there's some other fun resources on Cape Cod groundwater. We also have a podcast on there where we've interviewed some interesting people about contaminants. This was a fun, this is a firefighting bulb back from the 19th century. It would, you'd break it if there was a fire and it'd suck all the oxygen out of your room. That's also pretty hazardous. So I love that as a collection, but I love the pretty red sort of pomegranate color. Again, this is my contact information. You can email me, text me, call me, if you have questions. I'm really happy to help with municipal chemicals, business chemicals, residential chemicals. And I do a lot of work to serve the public and happy to do it. So feel free to reach out to me or ask me any questions.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Clive? Yeah, we'll go with Mark.
So if we, going forward, this is all new, we're all like, oh my God, everybody's flooding. Everybody check your basement. What do we have in the basement? Would there be an option if we said, okay, October 8th, when half people are already gone, like, would we be able to set up a secondary date of hazardous collection time that people could, like in the spring, when they come back to their properties, everybody look in your basement. Do you want to wade in 2 feet of water contaminated with all the shit that you have in your basement? Because I don't want to have to do it again. And if we could do something like that, would we have the option of extra collection?
So the good news about the hazardous waste collection programs, you can see on one of the slides, is I offer 24, and we have a thing on Cape Cod called reciprocity. And so any Cape Codder can go to any town collection, April through October. So you don't have to necessarily wait for your October 5th event. You can go to Wellfleet and Truro. That's covered by your DPW, Jim and his crew over there and the taxpayers. And so you don't have to pay a disposal fee if you go to Wellfleet, Truro, or Provincetown. And so those are June, August, and October. But I have 21 other events from Warren all the way to Provincetown. If you want to come to another town, like say Barnstable is the first Saturday in April, you can certainly attend that. You just have to register with me. I give you an appointment and you pay. And you pay the same that the DPW or any other host pays. So you have 24 events that you have access to April through October. It starts to get a little bit difficult November through March. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, I'm just like, if we, if as a town, we signed up 400 residents to get rid of the crap in their basement. People are lazy. They're not going to drive to Barnstable. Like, would there be the ability to set up a secondary date? Not necessarily even this year, but just to say, like, we have 2 dates this year because we have so much interest in this. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, you have 3 dates, and I serve the town, so I don't make the stuff up. The town tells me what they want. I'm going to tell you that if you think disposing of a mattress is expensive, hazardous waste is ridiculous. It's so expensive. I think this past year, we had a record number of participants in Provincetown. Usually we have like 70 to 80. That's like a good year. And this year was 181, and I'm just gonna call it Jen Cabral, because I think it was her that raised the awareness on Facebook, and I was really grateful for that, the local influencers. It was a really, really expensive bill. I'm sure if Jim looked back at 5 year, he would see that it was vastly more expensive. So the more people, the more you, it's kind of like this tricky situation where the more waste you bring in, the more expensive it is. So you really have to work with your town budgets, kind of capital plan for this. And then we work on a 3-year budget cycle for our contract. So we're gonna go out for bid in 25 through 28 in the fall of 24, so this coming autumn. And we're gonna craft the bid then. So we have had 25 hazardous waste collections since I've been managing the program, I guess for the last 9 years. You can add more, but it has to come from the folks who pay the bill, the DPW.
I was gonna say, who are the folks who pay?
Yeah.
That's in DPW budget?
Yeah, yeah. Although, and that's not the same in every town. I mean, I can talk about this forever, but Barnstable, for example, their budget for hazardous waste, it's far over $100,000 a year. It's in the general fund because it affects natural resources, it affects fire districts, it affects water. It kind of goes across wastewater. It's kind of a huge umbrella. So they've just put it into the general fund and not had one department have to kind of bear the responsibility for paying for it. So that's not like a fight every year.
Thank you.
So you have to talk, pass the buck.
Thank you. I see Michaela has a question.
Hi, Calliope. How's it going?
Hey, girl, I'm coming.
Just so people who do keep chemicals in their basement or the first floor and they're prone to flooding, do you think that keeping chemicals in airtight containers is enough mitigation in the event that they have missed one of your events, which are wonderful? I volunteered for them.
The worst one ever. So not because you were there. It was anyway, so no, not every chemical is different. Some chemicals really don't care to be in an oxygen deficient environment. So it really depends on the types of chemicals that you're keeping. Some need to breathe to some degree. We have a great form, and that's not a form, it's called a flyer, a brochure on our website, Love Your Local Water. Probably should have mentioned this. It's about for residents, small businesses, and municipal departments on how to store chemicals and how to make your home more resilient in storms. I don't know why I forgot to mention that. I apologize. Thanks for bringing that up. And it tells you kind of how to store your chemicals. So if you have gasoline for a generator, for example, it's going to be in a different storage environment than if you had pool chemicals, which, and then how to store those to get like in the same, if you have a pool and a generator, it's not storing incompatible waste next to each other. Like, so things that can combust next to things that are ignitable, next to things that love to burn, for example. So it can get a little bit complicated in that brochure at Love Your Local Water. Speaks to that, and that was crafted with, I think one of your guests was Shelley, who's a colleague of mine at the county. She, before she came on board, her predecessor and I worked on those brochures. So it's all about like stormwater health and coastal resilience. So did that answer your question, Miguel? It's a complicated question. Chemicals are not really.
That's great. I think maybe hopefully we can link Love Your Local Water to our own coastal resiliency page so people can access that information,
Yes.
even if they're unaware of the program.
Share the entire PowerPoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share the link to those brochures. There's 3, that are all about taking care of your home and protecting it in a storm. And part of that is chemical safety and security.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Start sharing again. I have a little one in between, and then you're up. All right. So jumping on from that, which thank you very much, Calliope, that flyer will be extremely helpful. We have created the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. and town staff, as well as our AmeriCorps service member, have created a magnet for everyone. Basically, it is a storm preparedness checklist with a couple of things that you should make sure that you're doing before every storm. Very cost effective, not going to cost you any extra money, just things to keep in mind, storms approaching, what to do. With also all the important contact information for non-emergency fire, DPW, has information about where you can fill sandbags, things like that. But basically what we're covering is our top 6 that we came up with. Making an emergency kit, so making sure that you have supplies if needed. Obviously, depending on the forecast, that's gonna be a little different. You don't know how long the storm's gonna be, et cetera. Making sure you have medications, flashlights, charging capabilities, et cetera. Staying informed, making sure that you are signed up for town emergency alerts and or checking the town website and other venues where the information is released. I believe that we also post most of it to Facebook, so you check the Facebook page for the town, a lot of it's posted there. And then also creating an emergency communication plan, so making sure that you have someone to check on your property if you're out of town, making sure that you have easy communication set up so that if you are not at your house and someone has to go to your building and contact someone else if they can't get in touch with you, that information is available, things like that. Third rather, knowing your flood risk. This is a huge portion of being prepared. So if you do not already know which floodplain you are in and which flooding impacts you're most likely to experience, you can consult NOAA, FEMA. We do also have some local sources available to show you your FEMA floodplains. And then I will also mention another resource that you can use where you can actually, through the county, you can actually input different categories, inundation level, sea level rise, et cetera, and see how it might affect your property moving forward. Fourth, elevating and waterproofing. So making sure that you're storing important documents in waterproof containers if they are on the ground. Elevating those important documents, hazardous materials, et cetera, if possible. You really don't want anything floating in your basement. So that is, you want to make sure that you have both ends. So the things that you really want to keep safe and also the things that are going to keep you safe. Fifth, prepare for power outages, making sure that you're keeping your devices charged and either fuel up your generator or check it for use. And then again, checking with the town for charging and warming stations, which are also, that information is also released through the online forums as well as the town website and the emergency alert system. And then finally, watching for floodwaters. So not only should you avoid driving or walking through floodwaters, if possible, we know that that's not always the case. But we do also ask that you submit photos and videos of each flood and their location to the town so that we can continue to build our database. That is extremely helpful moving forward. It will be very helpful for our consultant once we have one on board in terms of figuring out where those focus areas really need to be and what impacts we're seeing based on what type of storm. So one of the QR codes that's over there is a link to a Dropbox online. It will bring you right to the page where you can upload photos and videos. And then once we have some more photos and videos added, I'm going to be releasing a public link so that everyone has access to those photos and videos and that database as well. And then, like I said, important contact information is also on there. So if anybody wants one, they're right over there. Feel free to grab one on your way out. Any questions about that?
Thank you, Melissa.
One comment on that, because I just uploaded a bunch of photos and stuff. A lot of times when you copy the photos, it changes the date, changes the information about the photo, so be sure that you change the title of the photo file to reflect the actual date when it was taken.
Yeah, especially date, and if you can, also location. So either an address or a neighborhood, something like that, so that we have an idea of where that photo's coming from.
Or if that's too complicated, just type up a list of the name of the file and the information.
Yeah.
That's, it's metadata, it's like super. Yes. It's really good.
I have a question. There's a firefighter in the room. Should you turn off your electricity if you find a local noise? You should full emergency. You know, full unit. In the emergency box.
The textbook answer would be that anything you can do preventatively, we'll take. But don't put yourself in a bad situation.
As long as you're not standing.
Anytime water accumulates, it's, because they also have the power, the nice thing about Provincetown Fire is they do have a lot of people on this, for us in particular, electricians and those guys that can shut it off outside the house. They don't actually have to enter the building. You'll see guys and it looks barbaric, but they're gonna rip meters off. So you're gonna see that stuff happening in a real situation. But anytime we can do an ounce of prevention, it's worth the pound of cure.
Okay, sure.
I'm sorry, can I just speak to, at the last little info thing that you put out? One thing that came up with the last two of the fires that we had recently, saltwater intrusion into outlets. Who knows? Or who knew before that? Make sure all of your outlets facing anything outside need to be covered. So unplug your Christmas lights, all of this stuff that happened, like, we didn't know that, who knew that? So that information that can go out to everybody in town. If you're not around or when you're around, make sure those outlets are covered. They don't need to be exposed all the time. Like all it takes is one thing to start a fire that wipe out 20 people's living situations. That could have been prevented with knowledge, which people don't have. So
Exactly, yeah, and this is a very basic list, so there's obviously a lot more that could be added to it. And then another resource, if anyone does kind of want to look more into how to prepare for coastal hazards. I do also have this linked. Shelley kind of touched on this book quite a bit last forum, but this is a homeowner's handbook for coastal hazards. It is very extensive. It has a ton of good information. We do have these available down in the community development office. So if anyone does not have a copy of this and would like one, feel free to let us know and we're happy to get you one.
Thank you, Melissa. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Famulari. I'm a Community Development Director. Prior to my role as Community Development Director, I was the Environmental Planner. So I'm updating a few resilience projects that we've been working on since I started working for the town in 2017. I just want to add a few things. I know that Michelle had mentioned that our Coastal Resilience Plan RFP will go live tomorrow. But I also wanted to inform you that the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee will be having a joint meeting with the Select Board on March 11th. So you can stay tuned for that. And our next public forum would probably not be in this kind of venue, would probably not be until the middle of April when we will have a consultant selected and following town meeting. So just wanted to make sure I got that out. So there are a number of resilience projects which some of you may be familiar with. If not, I'll walk through these. The first is the Ryder Street Dune Enhancement Project. As you may recall from January 2018, we experienced some significant flooding here in the commercial downtown center. What this would do would elevate, would create a constructed dune on the beach across the street that would basically forestall some of those waters and basically block some of the pathways that we saw coastal stormwaters taking during that storm. The DPW has gotten permission from the Conservation Commission to put up a temporary berm, but this would be probably about 5 to 6 feet high. We have gotten the project permitted through the Conservation Commission and the Army Corps of Engineers. Our next step is to get a Chapter 91 waterways license. We recently had a consultant help us develop a long-term monitoring and maintenance plan for the dune. Basically, if it is eroded over time, what the town would need to do to maintain it. So that's essentially where that project stands now. Chapter 91 determination as far as what their applicability is for permitting is our next step on that project. I want to talk about the low-lying roads assessment. The Cape Cod Commission, in conjunction with 5 Cape towns, including Provincetown, received a state grant to assess low-lying roads across the county in those towns. What this enabled them to do is we got sort of an economy of scale and we're able to hire the Cape Cod Commission hired a Woods Hole Group, which is a major engineering firm based out of Falmouth. And they did some initial analysis. We had a public meeting about those back in this summer. It was June. From that assessment, we identified 2 segments of town that we asked them to do design alternatives to help mitigate flooding in certain low-lying road segments. One of them was Commercial Street from Howland Street to Hancock Street. And the other, actually, if you can go to the page here, it's basically this area. That's actually Kendall, excuse me. Howland Street to Kendall Street. This shows some of the probability of flooding. And the next segment is in the West End, where we also experienced some significant flooding in January of 2018, and again this January. This is the vicinity of the West End parking lot in the intersection of Point Street and Commercial Street. The reason why this was selected is because it is particularly flood prone, first of all, but also it is difficult for emergency vehicles to reach this segment of town because there are a few cross streets in this part of the West End. So the next steps, the Woods Hole Group is developing, we'll develop 3 alternative solutions for each of those segments. They expect to have those to us by late March or early April. And in the middle of April, probably at a forum like this one, we hope to present what those design alternatives are. And then there will be cost estimations and we can incorporate those into our capital improvement plans. So that's where that stands. You may be aware the intersection here of Ryder and Bradford Street floods during significant rainfalls during high tide. We have received an MVP grant to help design a relocation of the outfall pipes in Ryder Street Beach at Gosnell Street and next to Fisherman's Wharf. And those essentially end up getting blocked at high tide. So when we get a significant rain event, they can't drain at high tide. What the proposed design would do is put basically stormwater storage chambers under the municipal parking lot and create higher elevation outfall in the wall in between McMillan Pier and Fisherman's Wharf. And that, I believe, we have a preliminary design, and I think DPW's their engineering consultant is bringing that design further forward. So you'll likely see that on future CIP, not this year, but perhaps next year. We also worked with our Shellfish Constable in DPW to get some funding for stormwater improvements at Howland Street, at the Coast Guard station, and also at Pearl Street. And what that will do is essentially eliminate some outfalls that are causing, we see a lot of high bacterial contamination after a rainfall where you'll see beach closures during the summer. This will address some of those, and Howland Street especially, as we know, the low part between Bradford and Commercial, parallel to Daggett Lane, is a major source of flooding during coastal storms as well. So that, I believe, is also in moving through design phase. Okay. Commercial Street, porous pavement. For those of you who might not be aware, essentially Commercial Street has been resurfaced with porous pavement from the intersection with Bradford Street up to about the West End parking lot. The final phase will go from there to the Provincetown Inn. I've heard anecdotally from neighbors in the East End, in the 600 block around Suzanne's Garden, they had not had the porous pavement in 2018, but it was installed since then, and they are noticing that floodwaters are actually being absorbed faster since then. So that will help in the West End, but another segment of the roadway that isn't covered by the other low-lying roads assessment that the town has determined to be a priority is Province Lands Road, because it is an important emergency access and egress route to connect Bradford Street Extension and Commercial Street. And in January of 2018, again in some of the nor'easters in March of 2018, and again in January of this year, we've seen that road flood. So what the DPW is working with some of their engineering consultants to develop a plan in conjunction with that porous pavement work that would actually elevate Province Lands Road to get it above the floodplain, and possibly make some other improvements to the rotary that could help keep floodwaters away from that sensitive area between that flood prone area between, say, the Red Inn and the Provincetown Inn. Intermunicipal shoreline management. For the past 5 years, Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, and Eastham have been working with the Center for Coastal Studies to develop regional shoreline management plans. At this phase, one of the most important needs that we have is a source of sand for beach nourishment and dune enhancement projects. We're working with the Center for Coastal Studies to develop, to identify sites where we might be able to accumulate and store sand for those projects, for things like sandbags. Eastham has a large sand pit now, so it's possible that we might be able to use that as sort of a regional sandbank. But the Center for Coastal Studies is helping us develop protocols for how to operate a municipal sandbank like that. Some of the low-lying roads work has also been informed by a lot of the data we've collected from that shoreline management piece. And something that we're working on a regional scale is the area of Commercial Street by the intersection of Snail Road in front of Harbor Hotel and the Breakwater Motel. That also is very flood prone. We do have a preliminary concept plan that would create a large barrier dune there that could be replenished, that would essentially keep that, protect that stretch of roadway, which is an important regional emergency access route above water, or at least keep the floodwaters out. That is also an important, that is where our fresh water comes from. It comes up Shore Road and Commercial Street in Provincetown. And we are working, we just had a meeting today with representatives from Truro to look at how we can better armor Shore Road and Truro as well to protect those utilities and that emergency access. And in sewer replacement and modernization, the DPW has gone for several grants for to help make the central vacuum system over here on by McMillan Pier, by the municipal parking lot, more resilient to floodwaters to prevent the catastrophe that happened in August of 2022. We have not yet been successful, but we have gotten feedback from state granting agencies about basically separating the project into phases to help get better funding there. I don't know if you have anything you want to add about that, Jim. That's basically. So with that, I will turn it over to any questions you might have.
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. It gets lost a little bit in number 6, I think it was. Is that all 7 are obviously vastly important to everyone in this room, clearly, but the sandbagging seems like a sexual joke from somebody's 6th grade party. But sand is like gold in this town, the winter months. When it's frozen, when it's wet, you can't move it. And I think it's a little shocking that when you drive to Boston, you see salt cuts, you see sand huts, huge, fast size, metal enclosed storage units for sand. Yeah. I mean, this town clearly sandbags have saved so many of us in this room. I'm looking at some of them on the dais right now and right here. Certainly this last time. Without the sandbags, we would be underwater again. And again, the sand is gold. We should treat it as such, I think. And that's money, which we should find a way to build some kind of structure out there that protects the sand. I know it seems frivolous and silly, but without that sand, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Yeah. And I know she wouldn't be, sorry, we wouldn't go around. Because we held like 100, somebody estimated 100,000 gallons of water with sandbags and 2 doors next to Martin Direct. And that's, I mean, kids, it's 2024, it's Provincetown, we're on the water. Sandbags are very important to us, clearly.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I realize now I meant to add this to this slide and I forgot. But we are, at the last select board meeting, I'm sorry, at the DPW's budget meeting, there's talk of, basically, we're going to be including in this year's capital improvement plan, which you'll see, on the town meeting warrant, $150,000 for, emergency interim, flood protection measures, which would include, sand for sandbags, our own sandbag filling machine that we don't have to rely on, the counties, and that would be better able to fill bags even when sand piles are frozen or wet or whatever it is. So those are some of the prospects that we have for that sort of interim funding. And I would say, I know that and I don't want to speak for the DPW, but there has been talk about improvements at the highway garage that would help cover our vehicles. I don't know if that would also pertain to sand storage, but there are alternatives that the DPW project management is looking at to improve operations there. Thank you.
Okay, well, moving on from there, now that we have talked about what projects we have ongoing, I am going to cover a little bit about what we might see coming out of the coastal resiliency plan. So what are some other examples and what kind of multifaceted approach might we see coming out of this coastal resiliency plan? A lot of the higher level discussion about some of these items, it's hard to grasp what a lot of them actually mean. So the committee asked that we put together some examples so that you can all kind of get a better grasp on what layers of protection we might be going after. And then also kind of understanding more how it will be a short-term, intermediate, and long-term plan with some help from the DPW and some other funding as well. So with that, oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Here we have a graphic basically showing 3 different layers of coastal protection. So when you have a resiliency plan that is truly going to be effective at reducing floodwaters, protecting against coastal flooding, you really want to have many, many options and many things in place so that you have safeguards. So if one fails, you have another that will be right there. And these really do have, there's a very wide range. So I'm going to go through them a little bit closer as we go. But as I mentioned earlier, there are some good data sources that you can use if you would like to do more research on your property specifically. So this is one site that you can go to, the Cape Cod Coastal Planner and the Adaptation Strategies Database. Resilient Cape Cod was a program through the Cape Cod Commission and a large group of stakeholders. It went for about 3 years, and there were 2 sites that came out of that. One was the Cape Cod Coastal Planner, which is an online GIS site that is meant to help individuals and professionals alike look at different vulnerability scenarios, look at how sea level rise might impact your property specifically, how inundation might impact your property specifically. And then using that data to be able to apply it to what they call adaptation strategies. So there is an entire matrix that's available online. If you Google Resilient Cape Cod, it is the first thing that pops up. Highly recommend going through. There's 43 different adaptation strategies that they've identified. And all of those 43 have fact sheets that give information not only on kind of what type of approach it is. So whether that's you're approaching it from an open space perspective, a structural perspective, a non-structural perspective, whether you're looking at trying to create a green living shoreline, whatever approach you're trying to take, they have adaptation strategies available and listed there. And then they do also break it down further and give you descriptions of each. They give you different scenarios where these would or would not work. So if you're kind of trying to brainstorm what might work for my property, this is a really, really great place to start. So again, Cape Cod Coastal Planner, and that is at capecodcoast.org. And then this will all be shared online as well, and I have everything linked. And then the adaptation strategies can be found under Resilient Cape Cod. If you just Google that, it's the first thing that pops up. It's a Cape Cod Commission page. And one thing that we do have down here through the adaptation strategies is kind of what is an alternatives analysis? What are we really looking at, and what are we going to get out of the coastal resiliency plan? So we're going to have a few options. We're going to have do nothing. We're going to have some green solutions, which would include living shorelines, things that are more policy based. And we're going to have some gray solutions. So that's going to be more coastal engineered structures, hard solutions, things that are going to be more impactful to the environment, but will have a bigger change or effect on floodwaters specifically. So it's definitely a balance. We're probably going to have a variety of all of these. So green, gray, and everywhere in between. So moving on from there, I'm going to go layer by layer. So that graphic that we had before showing a layer out in the ocean or in those resource areas out to the ocean, a layer between, so kind of between the resource area and existing structures, existing buildings. And then the third layer is those buildings themselves, that existing infrastructure, how do we address that? So when you're looking at layer one, which is those resource areas and the open water beyond, there are a lot of different options that you can kind of view and consider. Obviously, all of them are very influenced by exactly what situation you're in, whether or not you have high wave action, whether or not there's a possibility for sand to remain, whether or not you have wind-blown sand versus water-blown sand. There are a lot of different things to consider, but that is what this coastal resiliency plan is going to help us identify. So some examples of the first layer would be living shorelines, which you can see here. Oftentimes, living shorelines have a kind of tri-part approach to them. So there's some sort of wave attenuation, oftentimes more natural. It can be as simple as an oyster reef, an artificial reef, or it can be as large as a breakwater. So extending the breakwater, adding an artificial oyster reef, something like that, could be part of this strategy. Beyond that, a lot of times it is accompanied by planting and nourishment. So nourishment on the beach itself, creation of dunes, and then planting that area between or on the dune to help add to that stability over time. The second layer, like I said, is the intermediate area between the resource areas and those existing buildings. So as you all know, for the majority of Provincetown, we do have an armored coastline. So we have a lot of hard solutions already in place. So the question would really be, how are we going to address or change those bulkheads, seawalls, revetments to better address the issues that we're seeing? So overwash of bulkheads, waves coming up and splashing over due to wind, loss of dunes, loss of beach, those types of considerations. So one thing that we may see is the addition of a berm or riprap, also known as a revetment, in front of a bulkhead. Straight bulkheads are not great in high wave energy environments, and that is something that we now know, but wasn't necessarily known back when the shoreline was originally constructed. So there are ways to kind of change that existing structure so that the waves are addressed before they are splashing up and over the bulkheads. So that's a possibility. There's also the possibility of building dunes in front of the existing structures. And then for those areas that do not have that armoring already, there are also options like semi-soft solutions, choir logs or envelopes filled with sand that can be incorporated with beach nourishment to really help protect certain areas that are not already armored. And a lot of times these solutions can be just as effective, if not more effective in the long term than just installing another hard structure. So there, again, a lot of considerations, a lot of differences depending on which location you are at. However, these are all things that will be taken into account in the coastal resiliency plan, and these potential solutions will address separate locations, separate neighborhoods based on those specific characteristics. And then the third layer, I know many of you are aware that elevating homes is the #1 recommendation obviously that's a lot trickier than just doing it. It can be very expensive, it can be very cost prohibitive. And it's also a long process, so it's not something you can do tomorrow. So there are also other options that can be looked into and that the DPW is looking into for very short-term solutions that can help at the very least with stormwater management. So while we might not be able to elevate everyone out of the floodplain right now, there are ways that we can look into or that we are looking into changing our existing systems so that that water retreats much more quickly, so that we are not having standing water in the roadway for an extended period of time. And then also just having less water infiltrate than we normally do. So the goal is really to have a layered approach. So those short-term solutions that are going to really help to address the flooding in the current term and really try to reduce as much of the impact as possible. We're gonna have those intermediate solutions that are really looking at a multi-layered approach. So having solutions out in the resource area and within the existing infrastructure. And then finally, the things that are going to take a very long time to permit if approved, things like dredging and breakwaters and more substantial solutions and elevating an entire neighborhood. So obviously those are much more long-term, but there are, in addition to the coastal resiliency plan, there are considerations going in with, like Tim mentioned, the CIP article that is coming up with potentially having a separate study going in for specifically short-term and intermediate solutions. So what can we do in those areas that are flooding in the short term? How can we really address those issues and try to reduce that flooding?
Sounds great. Very nice.
And that's online, will be online.
This will be online. I can post this all, and it does have all of the links included on those slides. So if anybody wants to reference anything I addressed, it will all be there for you as well.
Thank you.
Melissa, can I just add?
Yeah, go right ahead.
That was great. Thank you for. The DPW has been meeting with the Woods Hole group and trying to do something quicker than the coastal resiliency plan is obviously like, it's gonna be a big plan, cost money and looking at much more complicated solutions. What we're trying to do right now is look at our existing stormwater system, look at ways we can improve that. Most of you are aware that the system is put in the 60s. It's relatively primitive in some ways. If we have high tide, the water's going to stay. And we have over 990 structures in town that have to be maintained. And I know there's a perception of some that DPW is not maintaining them enough or as much as should be. So we are looking at a way to gain back the trust of those who believe that we don't, and to document regular maintenance and all the things that I know that we're doing, but from others, if you don't have the paper in front of you that says we did it, they don't believe me. So we're gonna work on that piece of it. Now, as far as protecting your home, that is really, I think your biggest challenge is, getting sandbags, getting ways to cover the sand. We're putting money in to get our vehicles covered out in the DPW garage. So we have things in motion, and I think this extra money will help us look at a more immediate. The sandbags, they work. I mean, I think we saw a brave effort in the East End. We also had many other areas of town that suffered flooding this past one, and depending on the direction of the storm, it's challenging to know, like, all right, where's next? But to try to have as much sand and sandbags available as we can, that's kind of a short-term approach. The other one is just that, I think some people believe that, the DPW should be helping people put sandbags out, and they're sitting in their truck not doing anything, and they don't know what they're doing. And that's, I disagree with all those statements. I think it's a fun, we're protecting, our main role is to protect public infrastructure, protect the potential pathways through public land, and provide assistance when we can. Most of the last storm, we had 4 guys that were on.
They work well into the night to clean up after the storm goes out, try to get the drains in case there's no flooding, that rolls back in. It's really challenging with 3 or 4 staff that are on to block off roads, to be on the radio, to communicate with other people. And it's just, frankly, it's dangerous for staff and just union rules and other things. And it's not as simple as, well, just get out of your truck and lift some sandbags. It's like, it's a little more complicated than that. But I know there's some, I get plenty of phone calls where there's a perception of that. But, once again, I think it's important that, these lines of defense are critical, like understanding that we're working on big picture stuff. You guys are protecting your homes. I know everybody's still traumatized. I mean, storm after storm after 3 storms in a row, almost exact same wind direction, really high tides. This flooding was not caused by storm water, by the infrastructure problems. It was extremely high tides and intense winds and intense storms that we're seeing now. And so, that's part of the problem that we're all having, the stress of the deal. So, we're here to work with you, and I think it's more helpful to look at DPW as we cannot protect your homes. We can help in some ways. We had a couple of property owners who said, well, who's going to help us? I said, well, we have private contractors that are, willing to step up during a storm event, and just being prepared to have, all right, well, maybe a neighborhood would say, hire a property management group that says, we need you to be available when we have a storm event to help move sandbags around and be on site, or, it's just, we had a couple of property owners that really expected us to be moving the sandbags around while the waters were rolling into who knows what part of town. We had 4 or 5 parts of town that were flooding. And so it just, I want to just set the expectation that we just can't do that. And I don't want to, create the tension between us and, because I know our guys care, and they do take it personally when they hear some of the negative feedback, and they'll read the things online. And I'm just, I know that we're doing the best we can with what we have. And, and we're going to be involved in this process for the next many years, and coming up with good solutions. It's like, I tell you, it's like, we've heard some really interesting solutions and some really good ones that we hadn't thought of. And, we're just going to keep working together in this, because we really, I think everyone's just freaking out a little bit. And, and we're on this as much as we can be, and figuring out how to do this in a way. It's just, I just want to don't set up expectations where we're going to protect all these houses. We can't. But we can provide you information, we can give you some resources, and do what we can to get sandbags if we can get them out quick enough. But I was impressed with this East End group this last storm. It's like, it really was quite a team effort. Actually, all of this whole last number of storms. So I just want to just say that I feel for that whole section. I feel traumatized just down at every storm, and it's just like, you can see the same people, and it's just, it affects everybody. So.
You guys are fantastic. Yeah, I just want to say you've been there. The DPW's been great from my experience in East End flooding. So thank you. Above and beyond.
I would offer too that it isn't your job to lift a sandbag. That is my job. It's your job to get them to me if you can. And maybe the drains, I don't know how to do those things, but there are things that the DPW is responsible for that we need to be up to date on. Weekly data the storms are arriving that we can't necessarily control as like homeowners. You're correct, 100%. Our job is to protect our own homes. We're supposed to protect the town in general. Right? On the micro system, it's our problem. And business owners, homeowners, and jumping right now, that's our problem. And we did a great job with you guys' help, helping move those sandbags when you didn't have to, but you did. But also what you're doing, in my opinion, is you're watching what's happening to that water. You're watching it accumulate in front of all these houses. You're watching it accumulate and not going down the drains because the drains have been clogged. It's been going on for hours. So again, the only thing that DPW should be able to do is just maintain the drainage, which is, as you just said, antediluvian, the 60s, not right before the flood, but perhaps it's apropos. It is ancient flood mitigation situations, because we all know the tides are not going any lower. The tides are going to get, they're only going to get higher, as are the storms going to get more fierce. So maintaining those drains is frankly a full-time job. I'm sorry, you need more people. Should be about that. But there's so many of us now on the east end with Susan Paskin and that group down by the Abercrombie House. That's a whole other scenario with drains and things that have to be maintained. That's not our job. Our job is our home with sandbags and friends of friends. And God knows her sons were amazing, as were neighbors, and I didn't even remember neighbors. They're digging trenches to get the water to flow out because the drains had gotten clogged. You can't necessarily do that in the moment, but before the storms happen, that would be the town's job. Our job is always for their own personal property. And again, Ariana said it, John already said it. You guys are godsends and gods to us because you really are there. And what you do and provide is beyond approach. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for, if I can just respond quickly. The storm drains, I wish it was an easier system to say that they're all the same. There's decades of different structures and different things that they're doing. And so we're creating an inventory. We're going to be more focused on doing a regular routine and documenting it and in clarifying where the problems are. Down by Suzanne's garden, it's like that system's complicated. I know there's a couple of properties that believe that it was the stormwater structure that caused all the flooding in the houses, and that's not accurate. But it's a complicated system, and on the surface, it looks like that's what happened. But so as we get more information and we'll be transparent with what we're doing, because I want these systems to work. I want them to be better. If there's a way to get the water out of there with, if we look at pumps and other more complicated mechanical devices, we're looking at that too. So we're looking at ways to kind of get the water out of there as soon as possible. If it's going to get in, and you protecting your houses, us trying to do better with getting the water out, in looking at improving the infrastructure that's been in the ground for many decades. But I appreciate that.
I should have a comment or question.
Yes.
John Carroll from representing St. Mary's. Two things. One, when you give sandbags out, I would stress with people to let them know they are much heavier when they're wet than when they're dry. Because dragging those sandbags wet, it was a challenge. But also, how realistic is, this is why I'm asking, how realistic is building the dunes back as far as protecting the property? Because after seeing that sacrificial dune vanish in 2 hours by 509, even planting the grass, isn't the water just going to wash them away?
Not necessarily. So that's something, it's kind of a misconception about dunes, is that they're supposed to remain in one location for their entire life. Dunes are, by definition, migrating landforms. The whole point of a dune is that it can move landward, laterally, and also seaward. So even if that sand is not remaining in that exact location, the property you're referring to is a little bit different because we are kind of trying to armor that with a dune. So there are other considerations that might go in there, but when we refer to a dune in front of a seawall, it's more of a form of nourishment with the goal of it spreading out over the beach over time and then creating less wave action over time because that beach profile has been built up.
But it just keeps rising.
Exactly. Yeah. So nourishment is actually a really effective way, especially with hard structures, to help mitigate those impacts that we see when we have a large coastal storm. So there are, again, depending on the location and depending on the exact circumstance, there are different things that might work or might not. These storms that we've been having, these south-facing storms, we had not seen for like 20 years before 2018. And now we've seen 6+ of them in the past 5 years. And more than that in the past year. So it is something that is becoming more and more common. And it's something that I think is, as people are moving forward, is going to be addressed more and more when they come up with those potential solutions. And I know it's something that the consultant eventually will take into consideration as well.
I was just surprised how fast it washed away. I was like,
That one also did not have any time for any vegetation
Yeah.
established. When you have an established dune that has great vegetation on it, if you reinforce it with biomimicry or sand fencing, things like that, and really let it accrete over the winter, it is actually extremely effective and they do hold up very well to storms. Unfortunately, this one, it was basically just a sacrificial dune at that point. with the goal of doing a temporary blockade, a temporary.
Well, it helps, but.
Yeah. So it's,
We know.
again, it's something that there's a couple different options. So hopefully it's reconsidered in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, I think beach nourishment is going to be a critical piece of this. We talked about layers of defense, lines of defense, having an ongoing beach nourishment system set up. We have all the permits in place, and we're doing it on a regular basis. If we have a storm that takes out a certain area of town, we're able to get the sand and put it back in that location. So that's going to be moving up on our agenda of getting much more aggressive with getting those permits in place, figuring out the
Something
step.
we actually discussed when we had our meeting with rural representatives this morning as well. They are also considering annual nourishment for many of the same reasons we are. So it is something we're considering teaming up to kind of get it done faster and more effectively if possible.
Are we doing public comment now? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. All right, so we'll begin with the comments. Give everybody 3 minutes. We can start the meeting, correct?
I am North Direct. Thank you, Jim, for your cooperation. The neighborhood in the East End, like, pulled together to really do an incredible job to protect those areas. Suzanne's Garden, people will now also be aware that they have to do some proactive thing, like getting sandbags in their locations and stuff. There's a couple of things that we learned, or I observed being out in that water kind of thing, and thank you. After filling 127 sandbags, a hopper to fill them automatically, or at least make it easier than digging into a pile of sand would be great. Perhaps the town, we can have staging areas, far east, mid-east, center of town, wherever that we can pre-season, put 500 sandbags on a pallet so that storms coming, this time it's in the West End, great. We already have 500 sandbags down there. Ideally, I would love to see like the volunteer fire department, a volunteer storm team. People that will sign up to say, I will lug sandbags, call us into wherever we need to go. We will, because there's a way to set the sandbags, there's a way to just dump them that they don't do anything. Like, we could have a coordinated effort of people in town that are willing to step up in the winter to do that sort of thing and help their neighbor. Pumps. Some generator pumps that are at least getting that water. We see it only takes 45 minutes. That highest point where that is like, if it breaches now, we're screwed. It's already breached. What are we gonna do with all these 5,000 gallons of water? If we can get it pumping out somewhere, even back into the bay, to sort of stave off that collection of water. We need to investigate either getting those plastic dams, which are deployable, or perhaps the water-filled dams that are like a snake that you put down, like say in the ice house parking lot, which is all unlevel. If we could have a deployable dam that goes in there that fills with water from a fire hydrant, it's 2 feet high, and it at least it slows down the water so that it can't just all pour into the street at once. And I'm talking about this one certain section, but I know there are other places in town, the same thing. There's also the option of perhaps, and we talked about this that day, like setting up at St. Mary's, protecting St. Mary's with a sand wall, but then in that parking lot, every spray of water that comes over there, maybe we just do levees built up, a 2-foot wall of sandbags, a 2-foot wall of sandbags, a 2-foot wall of sandbags, a 2-foot wall of sandbags. So every time the splash fills that one pool, maybe that's enough. Oh no, it's filled into the second pool. Anything to slow water going down into that drainage area will protect, 8 homes and a business and something. So these solutions are something every storm we learn something new. And maybe the next one that we can go through, we can try this. I want to put a shipping container in that seawall.
It'll just move.
No, I don't, like, it's not storm surge, it's just splash
A
up.
splash over.
So if it splashes water on the shipping container, that's less water. going-
It almost hurt to be in my truck. I know.
Yeah.
This is happening today.
But I mean, some out of the box solutions.
Yeah, it's gotta be something.
Think about. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
I was thinking some of the same things that you said. And I want to really compliment the group of volunteers in East End, what the people mentioned. But having a task force, having a volunteer task force, because not everyone has friends that are willing to come out and stack the bags, you know, for whatever reason, we don't all have a team of volunteers. And one of the things about Michelle's presentations, another component of that is who does those, you know. I think there is a gap between what the town does, what an individual homeowner can do, and what we need to do collectively. So if there's a kind of a network of volunteers that would be available to kind of meet, come out in the storm, or you know, before the storm comes, I think that's an awesome idea. I think this town is so great, I mean, the efforts that are out there, but when we can find these gaps where we can fill with community, it's really cool.
You have to shoot a letter from the East End that we're talking about, they did put together a letter having to share to the record, please.
Yeah.
Quinn Taylor, I'll take
Yes, thank you.
Whenever here and her amazing family who did awesome work with black pieces of Viscone and pieces of wood that came out, opened a door that Margaret found 2 doors, and that's amazing. It's really resourceful. Anyway, obviously, this is just written from the group to the town. This man over here in particular and his awesome team. As part of the neighborhood between Anthony and Howland Streets, we would like to say thank you to the town, members of the DPW and others who helped us throughout the recent storm and flooding events in December and January. During these events, we have observed how the winds and tides have caused water flow and how the hard and soft barriers have performed. Much of this has been documented in photos and videos. I won't bore you with all the details. We believe we believe the knowledge we have acquired can be important as we together look for short and longer term solutions. We have seen the sandbags on top of existing hard structures such as the seawalls at St. Mary's Church and the Ice House have done very little to prevent flooding. On the other hand, during this January 3rd storm, we were able to pivot those sandbags from St. Mary's to the north side of Commercial, making them a very successful barrier in front of all the houses from Anthony to Howland and to structures beyond. Sandbags that we volunteered to place at 509 Commercial were partially successful in slowing the destruction of the sand piled on the water side of 509. Unfortunately, the piles of sand that were intended to be part of a larger dune nourishment were washed away back into the bay and also forward toward Commercial Street. There was a benefit, however. The barrier, such as it was, and sacrifice as it was, did reduce the flow of seawater from 509 into Commercial. The unsuccessful effort of the renourishment will require yet another more substantial attempt as 509 can remain compliant with the conditions that the Conservation Commission imposed on its final approval, uploaded on December 28, 2023, and with the town requirements stated in the Provincetown General Bylaws, Chapter 13.1.1. I won't bore you with that. Again, we in our neighborhood appreciate all the town has done for us, and we look forward to working together. And I know our new friends on the further east end at Abercrombie House, I've seen use that phrase for now. Also very thankful to Jim and his very prompt responses to their questions and to their needs as well. We are very appreciative and can't thank you all enough for your continued efforts to keep us afloat. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I mention 2 things? Does anybody else want to say something here tonight?
If anyone has a public comment online, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself, and we're happy to hear you.
Kristen Hine?
Yes, hi there. Kristen Hine at 508 Commercial Street. I did just want to actually read the bylaws, Provincetown bylaws out loud. So number 13.1.1, shedding water from private property. No owner of a property shall permit water to be pumped or to increase the natural flow or alter the natural flow of water, trends such as hard topping from that property on any sidewalk or street or other public property to the injury, damage, or inconvenience of pedestrian or vehicular traffic. So that's the bylaw. And we have pictures that have been uploaded that prove that water was prohibiting traffic on Commercial Street. And let alone, you couldn't even see the sidewalk when we were loading sandbags on January 13th. So those are the rules. Those are the rules you guys made. Those are the rules that must be obeyed.
Thank you, Kristen. Anybody else? I just wanted to.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Susan Peskin.
Yes, Susan.
Hi, I guess I'd like to add that I've had private conversation and some emails with Jim Vincent back and forth since the last couple of meetings that I've attended. And he was nice enough to go out to 594 and the Abercrombie House in the area down in the East End that we all live. And he realized, and he said very clearly tonight, that the storm system is from the 60s, antiquated. He also realized when he went down there that the outflow pipes that I talked about were indeed either buried or had debris in them, et cetera, et cetera. So we've worked together, and they're going to come up with a plan to do some better maintenance down where I live. But what concerns me the most is since 2018, we've flooded 4 or 5 times, big floods, 4 feet, 3 feet, and we're not included at all in Tim's plan. There's not one mention of from Allerton up to maybe Snow Street. I was told by Jim yesterday after he went and viewed where we live that and he looked at the manhole that I talked about publicly that was full of seaweed, and he learned that that was correct as well. And everything I said was actually accurate. But what he learned was that the pipe system, the drain system under the street is extremely complex, more so than anywhere else in the town. So I'm a little upset to hear all of this planning. I'm glad for everyone else. And of course, thrilled that money is going to be spent on figuring things out. But I'm a little disappointed because maybe I came to the table too late, that not one mention was of where we're flooding severely. And so I'm just a little disappointed, and I'm hoping that the antiquated storm drains isn't just a mention, but somebody starts to unantiquate them, if that's such a word, and that we start to look at all of these areas. So I don't know, are we looking at 26, 27, 28 before anyone looks at us? Also, it's true that the very small storms, Tim, the permeated thing is doing better than when we had nothing, but it's not doing as well as it did when it was put down in 18. So I want to clarify that. I heard that comment. I live there. I see it every day of my life when I'm in town, which is 9 months out of the year. So it's not doing the job that it used to do. So I just want that all on the record tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to respond if you'd like. Thank you for your comments, Susan. This is Tim Famulari. First, the coastal resilience plan is town-wide and will be looking at all aspects of flooding within the town, including your neighborhood. I think now your conversations with Jim has brought to light the inadequacies of the drainage systems there. What I talked about previously was just some of the ongoing projects that we have, but certainly going forward, your neighborhood is top of mind for us. I know we have documentation from the December 2022 storm of the same issue. of the same flooding that you experienced this January. And I would add, we've been talking about engaging the Center for Coastal Studies to take a more detailed look, analysis of the East End to find out specifically where water is coming in to Commercial Street, between buildings, under buildings, to really get a better handle on what the sources of flooding are in your neighborhood, and what we might be able to do to rectify those as well. So although, current ongoing projects have not addressed your neighborhood specifically, they will going forward.
And Jim, you'd like to say?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that that I did speak with Susan. I did not completely agree with her assessment because I haven't assessed the whole system. I don't, from what I saw, it was not, I didn't have enough to say that it's inadequate in that area. And, but it's something I really want to look at. It's a unique part of the system that's different than other parts. It leads from Bradford Street to Commercial Street. There's different manhole structures. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's not what I said. And we're still assessing it. And it's complicated. The system's complicated throughout town. It's 50 to 60 years old. There's new structures, it's old structures. And we're obviously trying to make this as best as possible to get the water out of there as quick as possible. So I just want to clarify that I did not completely agree with that statement. So.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
I also like noting that we are dealing with sea level rise, and this is everly increasing on our radar as a cause for a lot of these problems. And I think that if you go back a very short number of years, that might not have been people's primary understanding of what was occurring here. But sea level rise is the reason why this committee is in effect. We don't have a plan. We are in the process of getting a consultant to help us create a plan for the coastal resilience is to incorporate the entire town, as Tim said. What Tim's projects are being worked on are things that have been specifically identified as priorities. And unfortunately, you can't change all of the infrastructure throughout town overnight. Our plan will go in stages of prioritization of what will have the greatest impact and be very much geared toward town infrastructure. I see Michaela, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you were saying, Michelle, and just, I think that all of us on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Commission we're all playing catch up. I don't, like Melissa said earlier, nobody expected all of these storms that are once in 100-year storms to be occurring so quickly. And so we're doing the best to educate ourselves and to educate the town as we can. And that's why we're having these monthly forums. And so I think it's really important that people keep showing up and keep sending in photos. The more information and the more data that town staff can collate to share with whoever is chosen from the RFP, it's all going to be really relevant, and it's all going to determine how we go forward in this. But we are all going to have to go forward in this together. It doesn't matter whether you live on the water or not. Everyone is going to be affected by this. So, please have patience, and please, I really want to thank town staff and the DPW for everything that they're doing, but also really all of the people who volunteer. And I do think that the task force is an amazing idea. And we see how well that our volunteer fire department has operated for so many years. So really the only way that we are going to survive this is all together. So thank you to everyone for coming tonight, and everyone who's continuing to show up and continuing to help each other.
Thank you, Michaela. Michaela, myself, and the other members of the board are all volunteers in this committee. We volunteer our time every 2 weeks to sit and have conversations to move this forward. Reiterate that there is a database of storm information that the town is creating, which is not only the most recent ones, but any pictures or information you have over the decades is greatly appreciated. And I'd just like to ask Melissa if you could just make one more comment to mention the magnet for.
Yes, so over on the table before you leave, and if anyone online wants a copy of any of this, please come down to the community development office. We're happy to share. We'll definitely have some extras. We have a magnet with that emergency storm preparedness checklist, as well as some QR code printouts if you want to upload any of the photos or videos that you have of past storms. I'm happy to also send out the link, so if anyone wants to email me, or if you are not super tech savvy and you don't think you can upload it yourself, I'm happy to upload them for you. So feel free to reach out to me, my email's on the town website, or to anyone on the committee, and we'd be happy to help you.
Thank you. Yes, there's the handbook for storm preparedness at the library. And please share this information with your neighbors, your neighborhood, your friends as well, and ask them to be prepared and share the information throughout the community. Anybody else? I want to adjourn. All right, and the second, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Good.